Hello, in this session we're going to take a look at the steps you should take prior to rebooting an HMC. We'll view those steps in the GUI and the command line. I'll start with the GUI first since people are probably more used to that. And there's probably more in this session than you would think. And anyway, let's just jump right in and take a look at it here. It's a pretty simple task to reboot the HMC, but to make sure you safely do it is another thing. So let's go ahead and log in. So if you're looking to reboot this particular HMC, the first thing you would want to check for are active console sessions and people that might be logged in. So there's a couple different ways you can log into the HMC. You can log in from the GUI, which we just did, through a putty session, which we will do in a little bit, and opening up a console session, like a 5250 session over port 2300, like you would normally do for full system saves and to actually reboot an LPAR or something like that. Those are primarily the three ways you log into an HMC, and there's different ways to check to see if that activity is active. So first, let's check for active sessions and logged in users. That task is combined on the GUI. On the command line, it's separated. To do so, click on this lock icon. Manage users. Here you can view the list of users that are logged on to the console, management console, and tasks that are running. So you do manage users and tasks. Okay, so here's what you see. You see at console, that is not me right now. My session is right here. It says right here, this is your session. And manage users and tasks. So this is the task, this is the user that's logged in. So there's a couple things going on here. Once I close, this task will go away. But you could have background tasks running that are left off from a session that was killed or just somebody else who's logged in which case you would see the logged in user as well. So the console session that says at console, let me go over to my other VM session here. That is this session here. There's not much you can do about this because you have to physically be at the console to log that user off. Other than there's probably a command line way to kick them off, or you could end task it or something like that. But generally speaking, if it says at console and it's been idle for any length of time, we don't necessarily care about it. Generally, it's not going to be 1 hour, it's going to be days. If there is a small idle time, it might be warranted to email or call the customer to see, if they're doing something at the console that would prohibit the reboot to occur. Generally, you won't see that though. Okay, so that's active users and tasks that are running. So I'll close this. Now the 5250 session consoles are pretty difficult to find on the GUI. There's really no good way to do it. I'm going to show you two ways, and you can pick how you want to do it yourself. The first is through like a netstat type command. So we go to HMC management and console settings and test network connectivity, which is oddly named for what we're going to use it for, but that's what we're going to do. And then you go to this TCP section. And there's no way to sort or filter this, so you just got to do a Control F to do a find, or you could scroll all the way around and look if you want. But Control F for 2300, which is the default port we connect on. You'll notice there's 00 right now, which is good. That means nobody's doing anything. I'll go ahead and open up a session so you can see what that looks like. We use ACS, but it would work with the old PCOM as well too. 5250 console. You'll notice down here at the bottom, it's got my IP address, port 2300. So if we do a refresh right now, that should show up. If I do another control find, There it is. Okay, and what you want to see is the established. That means there is actively a session going on. You can see that's my HMC IP address. This is my client IP address here. That's the computer I'm connecting from. This is the local IP as it is on the HMC. So if there's ever any doubt, for work stuff, this would probably be the NAT to our 10.11.56 or 55 address, which would be 66 something 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 55 or 56. That tells you it's our work one. If it's something other than that, it could be the customers, could be anybody, but that tells you it's an active session. So what do you do with that? Kind of up to you. Notify them that there's an active session, ask if it's okay to kill it. One thing I would probably do is connect to the HMC and just see if it's like a shared console session. And you can see right here there actually isn't even a connection. That's because, well, there is no other way that I know of to check for actively established console sessions. Sorting for port 2300 simply just tells you that somebody's connected to the HMC on that port. It doesn't tell you what you're doing or anything about it really, just the IP and that it's an active session. So if you notice one of those, it's probably best to log in to the HMC, go through this, see if anybody's got a connection. In this case, they don't. If there was one, this number would be something other than 0, like a 1 or a 2. And then you could connect to it, try to connect shared to it, and see what's going on, reach out, ask if anybody's using it prior to the reboot. What I'll do now is just log off and make sure that netstat goes away. Might have to give it a second or two, hit the refresh. Okay, so now it's gone. So I got 0 of 0. So that's gone. So now it would be safe to do the reboot. So we've checked for active console sessions, for logged in users, and for 5250 consoles, to which there are none right now. To do the actual reboot, go to HMC Management, Console Management, Shutdown and Reboot, Restart. And make sure you hit the restart. If you do the shutdown, you will need local hands and feet to power it back on at the customer site, unless they're using one of the newer HMCs like a CR1 where you can remotely power the device on. But anyway, just make sure you do the restart. One thing that I like to do prior to doing that is open up a putty or a DOS command and do a ping of it so I can see exactly when it comes back. And then I can log into it and verify everything looks good when it comes back. So I'm going to do that now. The ping-t is a continuous ping. So instead of ending with 4 or 5 packets, it'll just keep going until you do a Control-C to break out of it. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and do the reboot. And while that's running, I'm going to jump over to my HMC session so you can actually see what it's going to do. Notice I didn't log off, so it's just going to kill my session eventually and tell me I got logged off. Okay, so let's jump over here. So this is what the HMC looks like if you're standing in front of it while this reboot's occurring. I'll just go ahead and leave the screen open so you can watch it. It is a Linux type kernel, so if you're familiar with Linux, you will be familiar with some of the stuff that scrolls on the screen eventually. Okay, things are starting back up. And again, when you're remote, you won't be able to see any of this. This is all as if you were standing in front of the actual HMC. Okay, I'm going to jump back over to the Windows session. You can see it's pretty common for the ping to stop working when the reboot's occurring, and then to start working again, stop and start a couple of times while it's in this process of starting up. Same type of thing for HMC updates and patches that require reboot. You will notice it responds and then it stops again for a few packets and then it starts up again. So just because it's pinging right now, I usually give it a few minutes after it starts pinging again. But you could just as simply try your browser until it works. But you can see on the HMC here, it doesn't even have my welcome screen yet. In fact, let's go ahead and try to log in so you can see what it does. It may time out. It may just slowly load a banner page. No cause for concern yet. Like I said, I usually wait a few minutes after the reboot starts. Once the pings start coming in. In fact, you can probably end that, so you can do a Control-C to break out of that. And we'll just be patient with it here. Okay, so you may notice you get this console not ready. Perfectly normal after a reboot. You just, like I say, wait a minute and try it again, which I'll pause now and wait a few minutes. I decided to show this screen quick here. If you were actually at the HMC, you would notice this. No way to see it remotely other than you just get that console not ready message. Okay, let's go ahead and see if it's ready yet. Looks like it is. Got one system connected, 2 partitions, they're all good, so you could probably just consider this a completed task right now. If you want to log in and just verify that, that is fine as well. Again, it might be a little slow as it might still just be coming up, especially on my system as it has a restricted amount of memory and processor. Probably a little faster on some of the newer hardware models. Okay, you can see we have one connected system that is operating. No problems. The reboot at this point would be successfully completed, and you could close on. At this point, you could just stop watching, or if you want to learn how to do the same thing from the command line, if that's your deal, this is the place to start. I'll make note that this is about 15:30. 15:30 start of CLI. Okay. So let me log off. I might log back in and just show the comparison between the command line and the GUI for some of the active stuff, but to reboot and manage the HMC reboot from the command line, the first thing you're going to want to do is connect via putty. And you simply just type the IP address in. Default port is 22. And just hit enter or open. Okay, you log on the same way you do from the web GUI, HMC root, and the same password. Okay. Now I mentioned in the GUI session to view the active console session, or the people who are actively logged in and the tasks that are running are two separate commands, whereas on the GUI it was really two things, but it was on the same page. So here you actually have to do two separate commands, and the main command itself is lslogon, and you just do some switches to see. So you can do a man lslogon to view what all the switches do, but the web UI here is telling you this is a web command, so it's going to return results for web versus command line, and I'll run the two here in a second. So you can see nobody's logged in on the GUI. And let's do the command line one quick. And this is how it looks. So this is my session established through SSH. I'm going to go back to my HMC and log in. Actually, I can just do it right here. We'll log in with a test account. And then we'll run that top command again to see if we see a user logged in through the web UI. Yep, so you can see their session name is users test, and that's us up here. If we log off, that'll go away. So the first time we ran this, it said no results were found. That tells you there's nobody logged in, so you're good to go there from that standpoint. When you check for the SSH connections other than yourself, there was nobody else connected, so you're also good to go there. That will never be blank because I am actively logged in through an SSH session when I run the command, so you're always going to have your result listed there. So you can ignore that one. Okay, now that's users logged in. What about if there's any tasks running? So it's a very similar command. Instead of the -u, you change it to a -t for task. So -u is user, -t is task. So you can see there's no task running from the web GUI. So let me go ahead and start one. We'll just take a look at we'll do manage users and tasks. Okay, so if I go back here and refresh that, there's my task. Now I would also have a login because I'm logged in, but we're doing T for tasks. And you can see the task name is manage users and tasks. If I close that and rerun it, it's not there anymore. Okay. There are also ways to run similar tasks from a command line. To check for those, you just change your web UI to be the -SSH. Sorry, SSH-T. And besides my task that's running right now, you won't notice any others. But if I was to do some other command, which I can do, you'll notice a task there. So I could open up another session, and we'll log on as test. And I'll just do a netstat command. I don't know if I caught that in time or not. Nope, but it does show you my active session. That was probably a poor example. It's probably not even a task anyway, so forget that part. But if there were running tasks, you would see it listed there. Okay, now to view the active 5250 console sessions. As I mentioned in the GUI one, there's really not a good way to do that, and using the GUI for it wasn't super friendly. It's a little bit easier on the command line just because it's a command that you can grep for or filter out. Same type of thing. We're going to do a netstat. We did a netstat through the GUI, it just wasn't called that. From a command line, you do netstat -an, pipe it to grep for 2300 in this case, which is a port. So right now, you'll notice there's a listen connection to it. That simply tells you the HMC is listening on that port. It does not tell you anybody's connected to it. So right now, it's safe to assume there's nobody connected. Let's go ahead and open up a session. Okay. And you will notice you don't actually have to log in and be connected to a console session. Just the fact that I have this connection established on port 2300 will give me a result here. So same thing, we see established, and my computer IP address is this, HMC address is this. So it looks identical as it did in the GUI. It's just a little easier to cut and paste a command than it is to go to the menus and do the refresh and that kind of stuff. So again, if there is a session established, you would follow the same protocol we talked about in the web GUI one. You could log into the HMC, check for active sessions, like actual console sessions. If there were multiple systems, you'd have to connect to all of them. And then you just check for that use count. If they're all zeros, that's good. That means nobody's actively using a console session, but somebody is still connected to it. Alright, to reboot the HMC from the command line, it's pretty simple. The command is hmcshutdown, and a couple switches you can put on there. -R is for the restart, -T is when do you want to do it, and the answer is now. So you just run that, and there it goes. It gives you that feedback, and it will go through the exact same reboot process we saw in the GUI. So I'm going to end it here. If you have any questions, feel free to leave them or email me. Thanks for watching.